All right, welcome to the database team weekly meeting. So, Andreas, you got the first item in our agenda here.
Yes, I noticed that the vacation plan in the table above in the document is wrong, and I forgot to update that. So I'll be there this week and next week, and only then I'm going to be on vacation. So I updated that in the table. Hope that's fine.
Yeah. Well, Pat, you were talking about taking vacation in the next couple of weeks, right? And you moved it around because you didn't want to be gone at the same time everybody else was gone. So does this mess up your plans?
No, I didn't really set a date for sure. I don't have anything specific going on. I'll just have to see.
No, this is where you could have made Andreas feel really bad. So you could have said yes.
Yeah, totally. Sorry about that.
All right, and you had the next one, workflow needs issue review. Honestly,
yeah,
I'm not sure.
Me neither. I was just looking through a couple of issues, and I think what we sometimes have is basically pushing issues into the next milestone, even though we might not, fully understand them, or maybe they're not well defined or enough, and we might need to discuss those more before they are even actionable. So I was looking for a way to sort of call that out on the issue, and I found that label. Not totally sure that's the right label though, but perhaps makes sense to tag those issues somehow so that we can, make it more visible that we might need to discuss about them more before we pick them into the milestone.
I'm trying to find where label definitions are. Nope. That is a good, it's certainly something we could work into our process and the way we do things, but I cannot find this issue label. So I'll look into that.
Thanks.
Let's see, we can always add it to our cadence, and I'll try and find the definition and how it's used in greater GitLab as well.
On the description of the label, it says that product managers are using that if their issues need more review. That might be similar.
Appropriately then. Do you have the link to the workflow definitions for that one?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Give me a second.
No, it's fine. I'll find it. On this. Josh is not here, right? Oh, okay. We might have to chat about that one async.
Yeah, that's fine.
And Josh is not here. So on the CI retention strategy, so I don't think there's anything specific for us to do. I think we just need to continue to monitor. CI retention can be turned on, but it only marks issues for archival, and hard delete is being considered for 13.4 by the continuous integration group. And I just wanted Josh to confirm that makes sense. That's what we should be doing, but he's not here, so I can follow up with him asynchronously.
There is a similar discussion going on about events table. Just started to look into that more. So that's also an area of interest, I think, where we can talk about retention strategy or what we do with all that old data if we still need it and all that.
Do they have a retention implementation like CI Builds does?
Yes, but it's sort of debatable if we wanted to use that. We did have a retention strategy for events that was set to 1 year because it mostly feeds the activity calendar thing, in your profile.
Right.
And that was sort of extended because we wanted to keep that data for longer. I'm not totally sure where we use that data, but the notion is rather the other direction, where we intend to use that data or keep that data forever. I'm not totally sure why that is or what we're doing with that data.
I know there's a feature request out there for the GitLab profile page to show more than 1 year of activity. But there hasn't been any activity on that for a while. So I just know that I saw that a couple customers have asked for it lately. So, all right, I'll follow up on that one too. All right. Well, I think this is the UX UI strategy. Yeah, so I've been pinging the team on this one. I haven't caught up on my email today. What does it look like? They were considering it for 13.3. I'm not sure if they're actually going to get it done for 13.3 or not, but they're certainly talking about it, and I will continue to watch that issue and make sure. As far as there was a conversation in there as well about the UX work that needs to be done, the API work that needs to be done, and unless we're not logging the events, it doesn't look like this API is used very much. I got this query help from Stan, and over the last 7 days, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of activity on audit events API.
Right.
That's it.
I think it's for 30 days, it's 2 requests.
So I don't think that'll be problematic. The API work shouldn't block the UX work. And that's something I know I've talked to at least Jonas about. So I think we can proceed with the UX work without really having any ill effects on the overall API usage. So I think we're in a good spot, and we can put API on the backlog for later on and forcing those date ranges in any API calls. I don't think we'll break too many customers if we do that, but not a current problem. The other goal, and that was a follow-up item from last week. The team goal that we had was to submit partitioning. So we want to go through where we are on that one.
For the partition management, that is hopefully the final round of review today. So that was back and approved, and Mara is going to take another look later today, and hopefully that's going to be merged. There's some minor follow-ups for that, but it's nothing that we would have to address right away.
Okay. The migration tracking, that one was merged. There was 2 follow-ups that came about as a result of that are both, one's in review, one's ready to be reviewed today. So hopefully one will get merged today at least. Hopefully maybe both will get merged.
So one of them was the fixing the class name, normalizing that. What was the other one?
The other one was when you run a rollback of the migration, deleting the records from the table, the tracking table.
Oh, yeah.
Benchmarking.
Yeah, we feel safe. Everything looks great. We're going to run one last test that Andreas thought of. So by tomorrow, we will also have that there. But I think that everything else is ready. We learned a couple of lessons, and we feel safe to move forward.
What was the one last test to address? I missed that piece.
It's just timing inserts and updates, and mainly inserts. With and without the trigger. So we have run a benchmark, a test with 10 million inserts and then followed by 10 million updates and 10 million deletes. But that was a test to make sure that the trigger works and that the partition table, the partitions have the same counts as the single table. And that was the the important one to make sure that everything works. But we also want to run one last benchmark to count, to time what's the effect of having the trigger there.
Okay. And these are all combined together, right? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And then migration with background tracking.
We should be able to run that even once the first one gets merged, which fixes the class name issue. Then we would be able to run it. The other one we wouldn't need to have merged because that's more of a cleanup. So I think the only really issue there is this issue with the background jobs that we haven't really quite been able to figure out. When you run everything from the console, at least it looks like everything runs fine, but when you try to run the background jobs, we still have not really been figuring out why they're not getting picked up. And I haven't been able to figure out locally either, looking at it, what's happening. I see things happening, but nothing actually seems to execute.
Which is an issue in like your local environment and on the GCP server we're using, but systematically we're doing the same thing as with any other background migrations. What is scheduling, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, it feels like it should be good, but it would be nice to be able to actually run the whole thing. But I'm not sure what it would take to figure it out. You know, it's already, between the three of us, we've spent a good bit of time looking at this already, and I'm not sure that we're really any closer figuring out why it's not working.
Could it be related to the class names problem, or the class names problem was unrelated?
Yeah, that was unrelated to that part. That was only related to the tracking.
Okay.
But yeah, it is. So I know, like Giannis, when you ran it on the server, you had the issue where the very first batch got missed.
Yeah.
When I ran it locally, I ran it locally 3 times by just doing the steal, and the 2 times it picked up all the batches and did everything, but one time it did skip. But one time I had the background jobs also running, and it did skip the first one as well. So there, like that issue, I feel like is in conflict with something that's happening in the background jobs at the same time. But I really like to figure out what's happening.
Yeah, in my tests, the first batch was not even scheduled. So because I was running 1 million record batches, instead of having 240 jobs scheduled, I had 239 jobs scheduled.
Oh, really?
So I was missing one. So it was like it was scheduled and then it was missing, or it caused the cyclic to break, and then we missed it. I don't know. I was hoping that was related to the JDK setup, but yeah,
right.
it doesn't hurt to check. At least I double checked that the way we use the code is exactly the same as with any other background migration. So maybe it's a JDK issue.
And there is a couple of safety nets that we have as well. Like we were going to see that in staging, first of all. So we should be able to check very quickly if the first job was executed or not. And then if we end up not having one of those jobs execute in production, then we still have the tracking of the jobs Patrick implemented. So once we run the steal migration, we should be able to clean up after that. Right. So if we if we don't figure out why that's a problem in our environment, it's not exactly like a lot of risk going without figuring that out.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, the jobs will never run. Okay. Second worst case scenario is that we will be missing a job, but a job not being scheduled means that we won't have a record in Patrick's table. So in the end, we will know that we're missing this batch, and we will try to reschedule. Am I right, Patrick?
Well, it inserts the record in the database before it actually puts it in this, before it actually schedules it. So I think the record will still be there.
Okay, that's great. So that means that we will have the record, so we won't be missing anything, and we won't have it updated and finished. So that's even better. Okay.
Okay, so is there anything we need to do here other than just continue to track it for next week?
Seems like once the other one gets merged, the bug fix gets merged, then we can probably just rerun it.
Okay.
And even if we run it manually, then we can verify it's working.
All right.
Hmm.
All right, let's move on to this week then. So it's almost the end of the milestone, and I was going to say we've run through the board. Looks like Andreas is proposing the same thing. So we'll jump over to the board here, 413.2. I believe we just talked about this one. This is in flight, right? And in review with Myra.
Yes, should be merged today or tomorrow.
All right.
The next one is key pagination. There was a bug that was recently uncovered. So a small fix. I'm probably do it this week.
Okay. That.
Yeah, that one's probably not going to get merged at this point in this milestone. It needs to be rescheduled for deployment. Not sure when that will be though.
Is that because of the perceived risk at the end of the milestone, or?
Yeah, I just really haven't had a chance to follow up with the change that I made. It's working, but I haven't had it go back to Myra and have her go through it and kind of look at it, and she'll have to reschedule and everything on her what is good for the release manager. So I'm just not sure what the timing is, but since it's Tuesday, I don't know. It'll happen this week.
Do you want to comment and move that one, Pat?
Sure.
Probably the same for the next one.
Yeah, that one I have not really looked at.
Okay. And you're still up.
Oh, that's just the announcement issue for the other one that was prior, so that one will also get moved. That's related to the first one that we talked about.
Okay. All right, so you'll comment and move all those to 13.3.
Yeah.
Giannis?
Not important. Those are the minor documentation MRs that I have there, and I just pick. I may move it. I may do it by the end of the week.
Okay. Yeah, there's nothing specifically actionable about this. I don't know if you all saw the engineering retro. There's a lot of issues that we're doing, especially with like the documentation that Giannis is working on right now to improve documentation and communication around the review process. I don't know that there's any immediate action that needs to be taken here. One of the concerns was that if we change requirements on database reviews, we find a way to propagate that better. Engineers felt like they were surprised at some of the review changes. There's no specific examples in there. So I don't think there's anything immediately actionable that we need to do other than just be aware that the concern is out there. So I will update this one and move it over to 13.3.
So if there is nothing actionable in there, should we perhaps rather close it, or why would we keep that open?
I want to make sure that what we talked about in the engineering retro was enough, and that we have allayed any concerns that if something changes, we are aware that we need to make sure we cover all that multimodal communication. So I just want to make sure that I understand all the concerns that are in that issue and that we address them either through the retro or just by communicating that yes, anytime there's a change, we will follow these communication channels and make sure we have adequate coverage there. So
that makes sense. By the way, that also got attention from a couple of database-minded folks, and they were asking, well, what are specific concerns, like looking at the issue, or what is specific actions that we're going to take? So people are noticing that. It was just that the issue didn't say about the specifics or what is kind of expected or suggested to change.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
No, valid question. And basically I'll just copy what I wrote down in the retro and ask, like, does this cover your concern? Right. And is there anything else we need to do here? And then yeah, hopefully we can just close it out. Because I think maybe they just didn't know where to look. And a lot of Giannis's recent changes to documentation, I think, will cover those concerns. So
sounds good.
Right. Planning is ongoing. We have the issue out there. Giannis, we talked about this one.
Yeah, and with tomorrow's, after we run the inserts, this will be closed and we will be ready to move forward.
Okay. Pat.
Yeah, that one should be closed once we merge those two follow-ups that are in review right now.
Okay. Giannis?
I will address this in the documentation, and so yeah, this will be addressed. The other one is a response to the last response to what we were discussing before about the review processing, etc.
Okay. Pat, we talked about that one already. Anything else to cover on that one?
No.
Okay. This one's for Alper.
I just asked if he wanted us to take that one or if he's working on it.
Okay.
And the last one, that's a follow-up to the partition creation MR. It's relatively small, but nothing too urgent. So maybe this week, maybe next week.
Okay. So that one borderline to not make it in, and then Pat's 3 non-partition related issues are not going to make it, and those will be updated and moved later today. Is that right? Okay. What are we going to try to accomplish for this week? Other than wrap up the issues that we have in the milestone.
And get the migration out.
Yep.
So to which environment? Or just the ability to migrate?
There is also something, it's another dependency that we have for the migration is the coordination with the refactorings that the compliance group is doing. So they're basically working on adding columns to the table, also removing one and sort of extracting information from the details hash into columns. And as soon as we push out the migration, then those refactorings are still possible, but they need a bit more of coordination because we have to change the trigger definition and also the partition table. In that sense, I think it's nothing that should block us, but we should be aware of that and be prepared to help the compliance group make those refactorings because it's a little bit more non-standard than before. But I would think that as soon as we finalize our MRs, we run it perhaps once more on the GCP cluster if we wanted to. We should be able to merge the migration and then it goes to staging, goes to production. Or do you have a different perspective on that?
Nope. I was just curious about what deliver the migration means. So then once we're in production, tables are partitioned. Is that it? Are we running them in parallel to the existing tables, or is this a switch over? So once it's in production, we are actually on partitioned tables.
It's the former. So we run it in parallel for one milestone or one release. We use that to copy data over. So we do double writes. So we keep those tables in sync, and then we have one more change to flip it over and use it. And the benefit from that is we can, as soon as the data is synchronized, we can already try and see what the query times are without changing the product, or maybe even using a feature flag to use the partition table could also work.
Yeah. That's one way to know. That's the preferred way to do it, right? Using feature flags in case something goes wrong.
And we could just enable it for our project or our namespace, for example, and then see how it works.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
most probably it will be 2 releases. One release, after one release, we will clean up the migration and make sure that the 2 tables are in sync. Then we can test, run query plans, add a feature flag to test the full product with specific groups or projects, and then do the swap in the release plus one.
How far along this do we think we can get in the next 3 days? Because I mean, it's the end of Giannis and Andreas Day, right? Pat and I still have essentially 4 full days for the week. But how far along this do we think we can get before Monday? I mean, Friday is the end of the milestone, but we think we'll get to the GCP cluster at least this week to run another migration test.
Once we have everything ready, running it in a GCP cluster because it runs by itself, and we can modify it to do 1 million records for each batch. It will be pretty fast.
Okay.
It will be in a full day. You can do everything, run tests, and make sure that everything works.
And then what about staging and production? Do those feel realistic this week?
I would think we would be able, hopefully, to get the migration merged on Thursday. If we have the first piece goes in today, we run it on GCP tomorrow. The second piece hopefully gets merged today or tomorrow. On Thursday, we should be able to merge the actual migration, right?
Does that still go into the release? I keep forgetting when the cutoff is for.
Yep.
Does it? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. 17th is the targeted release, but you should be able to still pick it into until the 22nd.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So should we go all in on those, getting that merged and running it on GCP and merging the migration? It would be great if we can make this release, because then we don't have to wait for a long time to schedule the next step, basically.
Sounds good, but I'm not actually the one delivering the code in this one, so I saw Pat and Giannis I saw Giannis nodding. I don't know if I saw Pat nodding on that one.
Yeah, I was nodding. I think we can do that. I think
Okay. What about the actual migration and production? At one point in time, I heard that was going to take some time.
Yeah, I think the last timing was like 10 days, 9 or 10 days.
Okay. That still stands, still going to be a couple weeks to migrate. All right. Great. Milestone issues. All right. Anything else for this week? Nope. Okay. Looking at the planning issue, there's lots of little individual items, and I added a comment near the end to talk about what's kind of the next big iteration or next big topic that we can talk about for incremental improvements. It's all listed here. And events partition. Oh, hey, look at that. Josh commented on that one. So, and we can talk about that asynchronously. But take a look at the planning issue, see if you have any feedback.
Seeing the key step pagination, there was a request for adding that to another endpoint, for the user's endpoint, I think.
Yep.
Makes sense. I thought that might be an example where that work can be sort of scheduled with the backend group owning the API, because it's effectively not different than doing for the project's API.
Yeah.
It's right. I think it will be better suited for the backend group, but I'm also not sure which backend group that is. That's always trouble finding out.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'd have to leverage Josh on that. There might be some, excuse me, some expertise that we would have to lend to kind of help walk them through it. But then working with Josh to make sure the product is prioritizing that as well. So I can add that to the planning issue. Okay. Anything else we need to cover for this meeting? We are about at the time box portion that we talked about, making sure we time box the planning, the team meeting. Anything else we need to cover for this? Hit stop record then.